Hello, everyone, and welcome to Future Strong, a very special episode of Future Strong. I'm Lindsay Pollock. I am an author of 4 career advice books and a proud ambassador for Capfinity. And as you can see, my fabulous co-host, Nikki Garcia, is on vacation this week. We wish her well, but I am so happy to be joined by my good friend, my mentor, all things fantastic, Trudy Steinfeld, who is also an advisor to Capfinity and well-known in our industry. Trudy, welcome to Future Strong.
Thanks so much. I have really big shoes to fill today, and I'm so thrilled to not only be joining you, Lindsay, but to be joining our esteemed guests who are all trailblazers and leaders in the field, and also just a lot of fun, which we'll keep those stories for later. As Lindsay shared, I am really proud to work in strategic advisement and partnership development for Capfinity. And those of you that are new to the broadcast, Capfinity has for over 16 years really concentrated on using strengths to level the playing field in hiring, creating inclusive and really fair and fast solutions for now Gen Z, but always emerging talent and volume hiring. And it's just a joy to welcome everybody to the show. And I know, Lindsay, I just want to say, I was thinking back last night about when we first met, and I'll pass it to you to maybe talk a little bit about that before we get right to the questions.
I have the same reminiscence. It's got to be more than 15 years ago, maybe. We were both in New York, and I was trying to build my speaking career in the higher ed corporate recruiting market. And somebody, I believe it was our friend Fred Burke, who has just joined us this morning. Fred, welcome. Everyone in the chat, please introduce yourselves and tell us where you are watching from. But I believe Fred said, if you meet Trudy will introduce you to everyone. And that has absolutely been the case. Besides the fact that we had martinis within 5 minutes of meeting, which is always the joy of being friends with Trudy Steinfeld, you generously and kindly introduced me to everyone you knew and opened doors, including all 3 of our panelists today. So I would love to get to what our friend Glenn Fowler, welcome Glenn from California, John Carter, hello. Everyone is saying what an amazing panel we have. So let's get to our panelists. I always like to invite you to introduce yourselves. Why don't we go Seldric, Dave, Shawn. Tell everybody who don't know you who you are.
Thanks, Lindsay. Thanks, Trudy. So good to see you and good to hear from everyone today. So Seldric Blocker, currently I head up campus recruiting for JPMorgan's Asset and Wealth Management Division. I've been in the campus recruiting space for 21 years in a variety of different companies, different industries. And then also I currently co-chair the NACE affinity group for HBCUs, so the HBCU affinity group, a prior board member on the employer side for NACE. So I sit in New York City. Today I'm in sunny South Carolina in Columbia.
And we should also add that Seldric is actually getting ready to step into the shoes as the next vice president of the National Association of Colleges and Employers. So don't leave that one out, Seldric.
Thanks, Dave.
And for those of you I don't know, my name is Dave Ong. I'm the Vice President of Talent Acquisition at MAXIMUS, where I oversee, amongst other things, all of our hiring of college graduates and interns, our hiring of U.S. military veterans, individuals with disabilities, and diversity, equity, and inclusion hiring, as well as all of our hiring outside of the United States in 9 different countries. And for another 5 months, I have a night job, as I refer to it, as the current president of the National Association of Colleges and Employers. So thanks all of you for being here today.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm Shawn Vanderzil. I proudly serve as the Executive Director of the National Association of Colleges and Employers, otherwise known as NACE. So we empower and connect the community of professionals who support, develop, and employ the college-educated workforce. We're an association of 14,000 members representing about 3,000 organizations. Most of our members are either career development professionals on college campuses or recruiters that are actively looking to employ college graduates for internships, co-ops, full-time jobs. And we provide professional development opportunities, networking, and research to help all of our members to really excel in their jobs.
Many, many proud NACE members in the audience. I just want to shout out some of our friends. As I mentioned, we have Fred and Glenn. We've got Don Carter, who called this an amazing group of thought leaders. Our dear friend Roxanne Hori in Chicago. Odezi calling in from Nigeria. Maura Quinn starting her day in Boston with us. We've got Linda Mitchell, Rena from Capfinity, Mike McKay from the University of Tennessee. We've got a friend from the Finger Lakes region of New York. Karen from London, Lisa from MAXIMUS, Lisa Simmons here supporting Dave Ong. We've got a friend from New Jersey and our friend Chris Whitney from Scranton, Pennsylvania. So welcome everybody, and please keep the welcomes and questions coming in the chat. We're so happy that all of you are here with us. Trudy.
Thanks, Lindsay. So I'm, by the way, coming to you from snowy Cambridge, Massachusetts. So I know Maura Quinn feels my pain as she looks out her window from the North End this morning. Shawn, I want to ask you the first question. And I was fortunate enough to attend the second NACE HBCU Summit this past Wednesday. Could you tell us a little bit about the summit? But I also know that you, ever since I've known you, you've had a really strong commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And maybe just tell us a little bit about the summit and also your personal thoughts and commitment.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Trudy, for asking. We had such a great day. Our HBCU Summit this week brought together about 800 people from HBCU career development staff to recruiters to partner organizations to share leading practices and recruiting strategies to ultimately lead to employment outcomes for HBCU students, and really helping employers to think about winning that current war on talent. And we know that companies are very interested in increasing the diversity of their new hires, and many are committed specifically to doing a better job recruiting talent from the Black community. And so this was a great learning experience for them to learn new strategies and to understand HBCUs better. And this is a real commitment that we at NACE have, and me personally, to the Black community and to anti-racism generally, that it's core to what we do, and we want to help others to reach their potential at the same time us breaking down barriers and working towards a more equitable society. So we've made a number of commitments to the Black community and to anti-racism, and HBCUs play a central role in that for us. And I'm just really proud at the advances we've made. And so everybody knows, as an outcome of our HBCU summits from the last couple of years, last year and this year, because of the amazing sponsorships from the corporate community, we now are able to provide up to 3 years of complimentary membership to all HBCUs into NACE. So now we have 81 HBCU schools that are in the NACE membership, and we're providing professional development opportunities complimentary to HBCU schools. So this year, we're going to provide about 40 scholarships, full ride scholarships, complimentary for HBCU members to attend our in-person conference in Portland this coming June. So those are some of the accomplishments that come out of this as well.
That's amazing. Lindsay, to you.
Amazing, amazing. For those who aren't familiar, HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities. Seldric, I want to bring you in with the summit. I know you're very involved. Something that I thought was just so fascinating. You had university presidents, you had people working in career services, you had employers, and you also had students. So can you talk about some of your takeaways from all of those different audiences from the summit? What were the outcomes, and really what are the actions? Because as we all know, there's been a lot of talk over the past year about some of these issues, but I'd love to hear from you, your top takeaways and themes from the summit.
Sure, absolutely. And so, and I've had the great opportunity to work with the development of the summit for 2 consecutive years this year, in great partnership with Harold Bell down at Spelman College, and with Tamara who's currently at the University of North Carolina, but is a proud Florida A&M alumna. And so, but a couple of things, and you're right, we had a couple of great speakers. I was able to moderate the student panel, but a couple of, if I had to summarize the day and a couple of themes, I think I would do it this way. One of the takeaways is there's definitely diverse talent out there. There's Black talent out there, but we no longer have an excuse as employers to look for that talent. The way we look for it, though, may just be a little bit different, and we have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And maybe uncomfortable today going to a university or going to a HBCU or going to a career fair and being amongst a group of all Black people when you may not be Black, but that's okay. We have to make sure that that becomes more comfortable. And then one of the things that we learned from the student panel is authenticity is key. And to my earlier point, your company may not be the most ethnically diverse, but that's okay. Just speak on it and tell folks how you're looking to diversify the organization. So that authenticity is super important from our students at HBCUs. And I would say the other key theme is just honesty. We have to be honest as a profession about some of the disparities. And it was mentioned that, we don't need to necessarily debunk any myths. There are some truths out there that some of our historically Black colleges and universities may be a little bit under-resourced, or the students may not have as much exposure as some of the non-HBCUs, but there's history in that, especially in this country because of that. So we just have to be honest about that. But what that doesn't mean is it doesn't mean that every student's experience is monolithic. There's a diversity within the HBCU community. What it also doesn't mean is it doesn't mean that students are not motivated. And so there's definitely a hunger for success, a drive. We just need to be honest, be authentic, and then be very intentional on how we look and attract that talent.
Thanks so much, Seldric. Dave, building on what Shawn and Seldric have really shared about the HBCU Summit, you're wearing two hats, you day job and your night job as both an incredible employer at Maximus, but also president of NACE. So what is your advice for not only some of the takeaways, which will, from the HBCU Summit, but in general, in terms of hiring diverse talent, but also making them feel included? Yeah. Because I think one of the things my takeaway, and I think Seldric just mentioned, is that you can do all of these things, but if you're just checking the box and you're really not having that call to action to make a difference. So if you could share some of your advice, I think it'd be fantastic for everyone on the audience.
One of the takeaways that really struck me very early in the HBCU Summit is the call to arms from Forrest Harper at Inroads, where he really encouraged transparency. Right? We've talked a lot about honesty and authenticity. He really encouraged the individuals that were on that call the other day to focus on not being afraid to put cards out on the table. And I look at our personal journey here at Maximus in terms of getting engaged with HBCUs. And I think we're really having to completely reinvent what we've been doing in the past couple of years and really recommit to HBCU recruiting to levels that we haven't done before, which is really kind of exciting for us. But at the same time, we sometimes are cautious in terms of what kind of messaging we're putting out there and what we're making available to the world as a government contractor. And it's really kind of got us rethinking, maybe we need to get out of that cautiousness to a certain degree and become a little bit more transparent. So that's something that I took very personally, and I'm hoping that other employers took something from that as well. The other thing that really comes to mind is that I think you really have to look at diversity hiring, DE&I-based hiring as an investment. And that you mentioned before, we can't go in there and think of this as a check-the-box kind of exercise. Is that when we go to schools where we have opportunities, whether it's an HBCU, an HSI, a tribal college, what have you, is that I think that the individuals that work at the schools, and I think the students, quite frankly, all understand when companies and recruiters are coming in to, as you say, check the boxes versus going in there and really investing in their universities and their students. And that's, again, something that we here at Maximus, and I'm sure several other people on this call, several organizations on this call, I've also really had to be thinking about in the last year or two, as we reinvent the concept of DE&I and how it filters into our recruitment efforts. So.
I love that. I remember from the first summit, somebody saying, and please jump in if someone remembers who it was, are you interested in this issue or are you invested in it? And I think that's a really big difference. Thank you for sharing that, Dave. I do want to bring in some more of our audience members. Hermelinda Davis from Michigan. We've got some friends from West Hartford, Connecticut, and California. Welcome, everybody. If you have any questions for our esteemed panel, please let us know. I want to bring in the career services perspective, but first, let's take a step back. We've talked a little bit, Shawn, about NACE and Dave as president. Seldric, as an employer member of NACE, National Association of Colleges and Employers, can you talk about the value of having these conversations and being part of not just a company that cares about these issues, but an association? And I think NACE is so unique in that you have the sort of buyers and sellers in a group together talking about these issues. Can you just share a little bit about being an employer at NACE and why it's been valuable for you?
Sure. Yeah. And it's a great question. So thanks for asking that. And so, I mean, I think I look at my membership in NACE, and I've been involved in NACE for maybe 2 decades now. And so I think, well, first of all, it's just a lot of fun. Clearly, like, we know each other, so it's a community. And so that has been extraordinarily rewarding. So I know a lot of times as campus recruiters, as managers of campus teams, we're heads down and we're like, oh my God, am I the only person that's in this? But to be able to look up and see friends that are doing the same work and doing it at such a great level it's just absolutely phenomenal and rewarding. I think from a professional standpoint, it's important that regardless of you're on the career services side of the house or on the employer side of the house, that we're continually being innovative and evolving, and you need data, you need research, you need best practices in order to do that. And so NACE is definitely a place to get all of those things and have conversations with folks that you trust and research that you trust. That is helpful to do our jobs, and we all want to be successful at our jobs. And I think also, after, we tell our students, hey, we're looking for folks that have extracurricular activities and that are well-rounded. As professionals, we need to do the same thing. So as I'm managing my team, I'm like, hey, look, NACE is a place where that is your extracurricular activity. There are leadership opportunities as it relates to affinity groups. There's other ways that you can get involved. There's competitions per se, where you can highlight the great work that you're doing, and it helps hone in your skills. So it's a place for us as professionals to do all those things as well, which is really important, but also very satisfying.
Thanks so much, Seldric. I wanted to, Lindsay mentioned career services, of course, a profession that I have loved for a very long time and feel very committed to. Shawn, one of the things that I think career services professionals, I'll use the term struggle, is how do I change things when maybe I cannot be the ultimate decision maker in terms of career services? How can I help collaborate with employers? How can I bring faculty and other people in my institution to the table to really understand the needs of diverse students and some of the ways that we may have to shift? And if you could talk about what messages you might have for career services professionals and really how to get involved in this. And I also want to mention one just last thing. We're talking rightly so about HBCUs, and there are 107 of them. And I think sometimes people think, oh, there's 3, and you could probably all of you think of what those 3 are. But there's also Black and Brown and other talent all over this country, community colleges, 4-year schools. So Shawn, if you could, I know that's a lot to answer, but if you could just give some of your great advice on this for career service professionals, we'd be really grateful.
Absolutely. And much of the content from HBCU Summit can be applied universally as well. And you've highlighted that, Trudy, in that employers have been exclaiming their desire to increase the diversity of their new hires. Some have, many have, and the job market has exploded. So we have two things that are really causing a lot of pressure on employers. So for our career development colleagues on college campuses, they have an important role to play in helping students to navigate that labor market, helping them to think about what's important to them in their job search and helping them to understand how to vet those employers to make sure it'll be a good fit for them, particularly those students of color and other historically marginalized communities. They're asking, is this employer truly dedicated to creating an inclusive and equitable working environment for me? And a career services team, career development team can really help with that process. Another thing I would mention is that career services plays a really important role in helping employers to understand the needs of students, particularly those smaller companies that don't have the same emphasis or resources available, to help them to understand what they can do to make a difference and to be seen as an employer of choice for the best and brightest students on those college campuses, and particularly for those students of color.
So important. And we have so many dedicated career services professionals in the audience today, and some comments from everybody. Discomfort is the pathway to change. Let's lean into it a bit more. It's not just recruitment, but building deeper relationships within institutions and between institutions and universities. And relationships are built on significant investment of time. Too many employers seem to expect an immediate ROI. And I think certainly JPMorgan and MAXIMUS are examples of companies, and Seldric and Dave who practice that. Seldric, you mentioned one of the values of being a NACE member is the fantastic research that the organization puts out. And Shawn, I know that you have some really new data that we can share with our audience. And I'd like to get all of you to weigh in. Shawn, why don't you just start with some of the data that might be interesting to our audience?
Yeah, so I'll tell you about three very quickly. The first one we have up here on the screen is around disparities. As much progress as we would hope we have made over the last couple of years, there is still a significant ways to go. Our research shows that Black, Hispanic, first-generation students, and women are significantly underrepresented in paid internships. And we know that paid internships are the key to the higher number of job offers upon graduation and higher starting salaries upon graduation, in the range of $10,000 to $15,000. So we really need to be promoting and creating more opportunities for those populations with paid internships. Another area that we have looked at is the job market generally. So it's hot. We've mentioned that. And this last job outlook survey that we did showed that employers are going to be hiring upwards to 26% more graduates this year than last. That's huge. So when we talk about a war on talent, there definitely is to find the best talent to enter companies. And the third thing I would want to bring to your attention is the changing attitudes of students related to the workplace. The top things that they're looking for from employers are the ability to use their skills, the ability to learn new skills, and job security. Surprisingly, salary has fallen to the middle of the list. So when employers are looking to make a difference in this war on talent, they really need to be thinking about what are the priorities of those future workers. And here demonstrates some of those shifting attitudes.
Fascinating research, and I think aligns really well, Trudy. Just briefly, if you want to comment on, Capfinity and the work with strengths, that identifying strengths with students as opposed to cultural fit or just relying on salary is just so important in this hot job market. Do you want to comment on that briefly, Trudy?
Sure. I'll just say one of the reasons that in my transition from great work that I was proud to be associated with in the career services field to Capfinity is that I just really felt so many students were being marginalized. And, you know, all that we know and some of the data that you just shared, Shawn, about being judged on experience and what students really get those internships. You know, we don't talk about so many students who are in situations where they can't afford to take either a non-paying internship or they're juggling family and other personal responsibilities. I know I had students that sometimes had 3 jobs, but never even would want to tell an employer about their real story. And I think Capfinity's methodology since their founding has all been about using strengths to hire on potential and feel that in the hiring and in supporting ongoing development is really about finding people and giving them an opportunity to really showcase their strengths and skills. And some of the research that I think some of you may have just seen across the wires in the last few days that Capfinity just released with YouGov.org really aligns very well with some of that data, those data points that Shawn, you just shared, because students want to be able to showcase their skills. And many of them said in their candidate experience, they asked me my GPA, my board scores, my class rank, and what internship I had. And so if we're really trying not to check the box and make a difference in diverse and inclusive hiring, we have to throw out some of those old metrics and really give these students an opportunity. So.
And can I add something to that too, Trudy, is that I think we also need to do a better job, both on the employer and on the college side, of empowering and educating students about what offers to take and how to really negotiate and ask questions about where there may be room. Because you look at these equity issues. I spent yesterday at the University of Miami, a shout out to the Go Canes, I guess, teaching a program to about 20, 25 students or so on negotiation skills. And it's so disheartening to see that students have this image in their head that there's only so many places where they can negotiate an offer, and not understanding the complexities of total compensation, say, for example, that there are ways to ask questions and to ask for additional benefits, say, for example, that, you know, they just don't know that it's out there. And I think we need to do a better job to make sure they understand how to do that effectively.
I love, Dave, that you were doing that. That was another outcome, I think, that I took from the HBCU Summit, when you talk about being invested in students, not just at HBCUs or Hispanic serving institutions, but everywhere, that employers are on campus educating students about these issues. We've got a couple new friends coming in here under the wire. And Seldric, I want to get your take on some of the research as well. Brian Quick is with us, saying how great the data points were. Kelly Smith on the career services side. I always appreciate the value NACE provides our profession, and read the research on what students are seeking in employment opportunities and the desire to apply skills. It makes me think it's not just a message for employers, but also for us in higher ed. We need to be sure students are actually gaining skills they can apply before they leave us. And Dave, a lot of support from the audience about teaching students in negotiation. Seldric, what were some of your takeaways as an employer from the new NACE research?
Yeah, thank you. And I think, I think we're seeing that as well. I mean, we know the market is hot. It's a candidate's market for sure. Students are having a lot more choices. I think the salary information is interesting. With a high salary comes a certain type of lifestyle or perception. And so there's been a bit of a shift, especially in markets like financial services, investment banking. And so students are asking questions around, will this job 100% fulfill what I want out of life? Or are there other ways that I can find fulfillment? And are there companies that will allow me to fulfill my life in a way that I want to be filled, or that they want it to be filled? So I think it's spot on. I also think that it's important, to Dave's point, that we are educating students. I always tell my team, students don't apply to what they don't know about. And so a lot of times there are opportunities where there's not a major associated with it. And so we need to sometimes bridge the gap so that students are aware. And if you didn't grow up in a household where that was the conversation that was happening at the table, then you just don't know about some of these opportunities. And then we also need to make sure through that education, we're also empowering students to say, hey, you can work here and you could be successful here too. So I think the data and the research is spot on.
Thank you so much. So this time has flown by. I just want to say that I'm hoping I didn't blow it. I'm hoping I'm asked back. But it just gave me so much joy to be on with all of you, Seldric, Shawn, Dave, and Lindsay. And thanks for support in the background from Haley. You're all some of my favorite human beings. I also want to give a shout out that NACE is going to have their annual conference in person in Portland, and then later in the month, a virtual conference. I am so pumped to give all of you a hug in person. The aforementioned martinis, I think for those of us that like that, I'm happy to even mix them in Dave's presidential suite if I'm given an opportunity.
Well,
But I just want to say I learned so much today, and I really want to thank you. And I'm going to hand it over to Lindsay. And as Future Strong does every week, Lindsay does an amazing job of summing up 3 takeaways that are, and I think there could be a lot more, but Lindsay, I kick it to you.
I normally number my comments, but I have so many notes from all of you from what we just talked about that I'm not going to number them. But before I get to that, I did want to say something publicly that I so value. I'm a vendor, right? I'm a consultant, and there are very few organizations that welcome those of us who are not in, let's call it, the core of the association. And NACE is an organization, and I very much credit this to Shawn and to Dave, your presidency, that invites people like me and many who are on the call as consultants to be speakers, to be task force members, to be thoroughly involved with the organization. And there is, I think, Seldric, you mentioned community is just so powerful to be so truly inclusive of not just various identities, but of people who do this work in different ways and different areas. So I just wanted to say publicly how grateful I am for that. And that was not me shilling to be a speaker this year. I've already been accepted at NACE, but I was not just saying that to get on your good side, although I do want to get invited to the presidential suite for martinis as well. So maybe I just did that. So thank you to Shawn Vanderzil, Dave Ong, and Seldric Bacher for being our guests on Future Strong episode 31, co-hosted by the fabulous Trudy Steinfeld. We talked today about diversity, equity, and inclusion in our field of career services and early talent. And a couple of takeaways. Number one, just some words that stood out today: authenticity and transparency. We have to be comfortable, as Seldric said, being uncomfortable. Authenticity means being honest, even if your numbers are not great, even if your organization is not currently as diverse as you want it to be honest about that. Be vulnerable about some of your weaknesses. That is absolutely the first step to truly making change in our field. Another key takeaway is to look at diversity, equity, and inclusion hiring as an investment. This is not about checking the box. This is not about putting out a statement. It's about truly moving the needle and tracking what we do with data and authenticity. Moving to the community aspect of this, NACE, the National Association of Colleges and Employers, is a community. And Seldric, I'm quoting you here a lot, but you mentioned that we ask students to be well-rounded. We as professionals need to be well-rounded. And so whether that is NACE and or other memberships, there is so much value in getting together, in sharing data, and sharing best practices, in having fun together, and really truly building a sense of community. And a final takeaway, NACE has some really, really powerful new data, particularly on internships, which we know are so integral to students getting those high-paid jobs and really starting their careers on a strong footing. And students who have been from historically marginalized groups have for so long been shut out of internships. And that really is the first step to making true change, not just in our industry, but in our society. When students have those paid internships early on, they really are able to thrive. So thank you to all of our participants in this episode. Thank you to our very active audience in chat. We're so grateful to have all of you here with us. And I would like to invite you to learn more about NACE at naceweb.org. The conference is coming up in June, and we will all be there and look forward to, I think, maybe a live Future Strong episode when we're there. I'd also like to invite you to join us for our next Future Strong. Episode 32 is coming up in 2 weeks. It is Women's History Month in March, and we will be welcoming Joanna Walker, who's head of recruitment at Evercore, to talk about some of their efforts to bring more women into the financial services industry. So with that, I'd like to thank Trudy, Seldric, Dave, and Shawn, and all of you for joining us. And as always, our producer, Haley Jerry from Capfinity. Nikki Corchea, we look forward to bringing you back next week. Trudy, I'm going to give you the final word.
I can only say that I just really value all of you and everyone who has participated. And I hope that this call to action, which NACE and has really organized, I hope we take it seriously. I hope we wake up every day thinking, how can we move the needle on diversity, equity, and make it a better place for, as Lindsay said, society, but also the hiring community and the students that we serve and the talent that really needs our support.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity. Take care. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Bye.